Hello everyone, and welcome to the M.O.W channel. Today, we'll be talking about the Pauls City family shooting incident in Washington state. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now, let's begin our story. We now head to Pauls City, Washington, a quiet, picturesque suburb about 30 minutes east of Seattle, surrounded by mountains and lakes. It's the kind of place where many American middle-class families dream of living. White houses, manicured lawns, and peaceful streets. In October 2024, the Humiston family, who lived here, seemed to embody that picture-perfect life. Mark, the father, was a respected electrical engineer in Seattle. Sarah, the mother, was a devoted homemaker who cared for their 5 children, a 15-year-old eldest son, and his younger siblings aged 13, 11, 9, and 7. To their neighbors, they appeared to be a close-knit, loving, and exemplary Christian family. But beneath that image of unity lay a disturbing reality: a household defined by isolation, control, and religious extremism. The Humiston home was not merely a place to live. It was their kingdom, a self-contained world completely shut off from the outside. Their lives were ruled by strict faith and discipline, what some later called religious extremism. The parents have completely removed their children from public education, opting for homeschooling. But this wasn't just about teaching at home. It reflected a deep distrust toward government and modern culture. They feared the corrupting influences of the outside world. As a result, their 5 children grew up with little to no interaction with peers. They had no friends, no access to the internet, and none of the cultural experiences most teenagers take for granted. Inside the home, the rules were said to be militarily strict. Even small mistakes such as falling short of academic expectations could lead to harsh punishment or scolding. This oppressive, closed environment became a suffocating prison, especially for the 15-year-old eldest son. Among the siblings, the eldest son bore the heaviest expectations. He was meant to follow in his father's footsteps and become the moral and spiritual successor of the family's ideals. But like any teenager, he yearned for freedom, for a glimpse of the world beyond those walls. That natural desire was relentlessly suppressed, building layers of anger and frustration within him. The breaking point came when he failed a school test. To outsiders, this might seem trivial, but in the Humiston household, where control and perfection were sacred, it was an unforgivable failure. The boy's shame, fear of punishment, and crushing disappointment from his parents combined to push him toward despair. That small academic failure became the spark that ignited the emotional bomb, long hidden inside him. The ultimate irony of the Humiston family was that, despite their insulated life, there was still a gun in the house. Mark owned a silver Glock pistol, locked securely, supposedly for protection against external threats. But the weapon of protection became the instrument of destruction. The 15-year-old son was the only one among the siblings who knew the code to the gun safe. That knowledge gave him something powerful: the ability to overturn his father's control. One early morning, while everyone was asleep, the boy quietly opened the safe. There was no intruder that night, only a member of the family, once trusted and loved, who now held the weapon. Mark and Sarah, and 3 of the younger children, 7-year-old Catherine, 9-year-old Joshua, and 13-year-old Benjamin, all lost their lives in their sleep. This tragedy, behind the facade of a perfect home, was born from 3 deadly elements: isolation, extreme control, and easy access to a weapon. It was a perfect storm, one that turned a symbol of family protection into the tool of their destruction. Everyone, in the early morning of Monday, October 21, 2024, around 4:55 a.m., the Lake Alice Road area in Pauls City was shrouded in deep darkness and silence. But inside the Humiston family home, that quiet was shattered by 5 gunshots, marking the end of a tragedy that tore the family apart. Immediately after the shooting, the house fell silent once more, as if the earlier gunfire had never happened. For the only surviving child, the 11-year-old second daughter, this silence stretched unbearably, a terror-filled eternity. The bullets had not missed her completely. She was injured, but fortunately not fatally. What saved her was a combination of instinct and a remarkably clever action, born of sheer terror. Right after the shooting, she froze in place and pretended to be dead. In a situation so horrifying that it could only be imagined or seen in movies, the 11-year-old girl performed her final, desperate act of survival. She listened intently to every sound around her: footsteps, ambient noises, even perhaps her brother's trembling breaths. How much time passed? In that seemingly endless silence, she realized that the threat had passed. Despite her painful injuries, she cautiously rose from her bed. She knew too well what had happened to her parents and 3 siblings. The house was no longer a safe refuge. It was a crime scene in a hell where her childhood had been violently shattered. The girl acted quickly. There was no time to hesitate. She avoided the front door and the hallways. Instead, she headed to her bedroom window, pushed her small body through, and jumped into the darkness of the yard. Barefoot, in the freezing pre-dawn air and racked by pain and fear, she ran desperately toward the only connection to the outside world, her neighbor's house. Gasping for breath, she finally knocked on the neighbor's door. Before 5 a.m., the neighbor opened the door and was horrified to see an 11-year-old girl, bleeding and trembling. The neighbor immediately called 911. This was the first emergency signal for the case. The neighbor's shaking voice over the phone, combined with the desperate, almost scream-like account from the girl, froze the King County Sheriff's Office night dispatchers in their tracks. The girl barely managed to speak. "My brother, he shot them all." She made it clear that the shooter was not an intruder, but her 15-year-old brother. She also explained that pretending to be dead was what allowed her to survive. This first 911 call was not just a murder report. It was the voice of a child survivor, reporting an unimaginable massacre that occurred inside her own family. Meanwhile, the 15-year-old eldest son was inside the house, methodically carrying out a plan immediately after the killings. His goal was clear: to remove all suspicion from himself and pin the blame on one of his deceased siblings. He took his father's Glock and went to the room of his 13-year-old brother, Benjamin. He placed the gun near Benjamin's body, intending to make it appear as if Benjamin had committed the murders and then taken his own life. This act went beyond mere cover-up psychologically. It could be interpreted as projecting the family's oppressive dynamics onto the destroyed younger sibling. Benjamin, it was reported in some court documents, had already been severely reprimanded by their parents prior to the incident for behavior that did not meet their strict standards, including searching for pornography online. The eldest son exploited this fact, creating a plausible scenario within the context of their insular family conflicts that Benjamin had killed the family in a fit of anger over punishment. After setting up this chilling scene, the 15-year-old called 911 himself, maintaining a relatively calm and composed tone. He posed as a witness. "My brother Benjamin shot our whole family. I think it was because of a discipline issue." This call directly conflicted with the first 911 report from the neighbor, just minutes earlier, describing the 11-year-old girl fleeing and injured. Two survivors from the same house, recounting completely opposite stories. A situation unprecedented in emergency response. The dispatchers faced immediate confusion, unsure which account was credible. However, the details provided by the girl, her injuries, fleeing barefoot from the house, lent credibility to her report. Upon receiving these two conflicting 911 calls, the King County Sheriff's Office issued a highest priority response. Police vehicles raced through the darkness of Pauls City. Along Lake Alice Road, sirens blaring, the first officers on the scene approached with extreme caution, aware the perpetrator could still be inside. At the front door, they encountered the 15-year-old eldest son. He did not resist arrest and was taken into custody without incident, still playing the role of a victim witness. Once inside the house, officers were met with the horrifying truth. Mark, Sarah, Catherine, Joshua, and Benjamin, 5 bodies were discovered. Forensic evidence later confirmed that 4 of them had been shot in the head, indicating deliberate and intentional killings. A silver Glock was found next to Benjamin's body, but the testimony of the 11-year-old and the circumstances of the scene exposed the flaws in this staged narrative. The scale and brutality of the incident shocked even veteran officers. This was not a simple shooting. It was a family annihilation that occurred within the confines of their own closed household. The scene was immediately secured, and the investigation quickly focused on the 15-year-old eldest son as the prime suspect. That morning, the seemingly perfect Pauls City family had been shattered, leaving only blood, deception, and the brave testimony of a child survivor. Everyone, the story now reaches the pivotal moment that decisively turned the Humiston family tragedy. The testimony of the 11-year-old surviving daughter. Her courage and precise recollection became a devastating threat to the false narrative, meticulously constructed by her older brother. For the 11-year-old girl, the early morning of October 21, 2024, was a nightmare that would never be erased. When she heard the horrifying sounds of her family members being shot, her body was already seized by extreme terror. And when her brother entered her room, she had been shot, but, instinctively and with extraordinary willpower, froze in place and held her breath, playing dead. This moment was not merely acting. It was a life-or-death turning point. According to investigation records, the 15-year-old eldest son went from room to room after the shootings, checking each family member's body in a chilling act of cruelty. Had the girl made the slightest movement or sound, her brother's gun would have been aimed at her again. Even while enduring the pain of bullets and the shock of witnessing her family being killed, she accurately assessed and responded to her brother's intentions. To avoid being detected during his brutal inspection, She remained perfectly still, allowing herself to appear completely dead. This playing dead strategy represented the first moment of resistance against the perpetrator's plan to eliminate the entire family. In the brief moment when her brother left the scene, to focus on concealing evidence, the girl took action. Despite bleeding and trembling with fear, she quickly made her way to the window. Police later confirmed that she escaped through her bedroom window, which became the only conduit to convey the tragic truth inside the house to the outside world. Once outside, she ran barefoot through the cold, pre-dawn air, over sharp stones and darkness, toward the neighbor's house approximately 400 meters away. When she knocked on the neighbor's door, her desperation and blood-stained body became irrefutable evidence of the crime. Her courageous act of running to the neighbor completely invalidated the false 911 call her 15-year-old brother had made from inside the house. By the time the police arrived, the girl was already reporting the truth. Had she not escaped, the police might have believed the fabricated scenario and identified her 13-year-old brother as the perpetrator. Through her life-risking escape, she effectively determined the course of justice. Even while being treated at the hospital, the 11-year-old provided investigators with remarkably detailed and consistent testimony. Her statements were critical in clearly identifying the 15-year-old eldest son as the perpetrator. She accurately identified the firearm used in the killings as the silver Glock, owned by her father, Mark. Moreover, she confirmed that the gun had been locked in a safe, and that only her 15-year-old brother knew the code. A decisive fact linking him to the weapon and proving he was not simply a victim but a planned perpetrator. She also testified that her brother checked the bodies of family members one by one after the shootings, a detail that demonstrated the deliberate and cruel intent behind the killings. This testimony became the cornerstone for the prosecution to charge the 15-year-old with aggravated first-degree murder and to argue for his transfer to an adult court. The fact that a traumatized child could provide such clear and critical information left a deep impression on the investigative team. Her testimony perfectly matched the physical evidence collected at the scene, leaving the eldest son's false 911 call logically untenable. He had claimed that 13-year-old Benjamin, enraged over parental discipline regarding pornography, had killed the family, but investigators noted that even though a firearm was found in Benjamin's room, the circumstances did not support a scenario in which Benjamin killed and then committed suicide. If Benjamin had used the gun, how would the 15-year-old have known the safe's combination? And although the eldest son claimed to be hiding during the call, police found him calmly outside the house upon arrival. Additionally, there was a major discrepancy between his claimed motive for Benjamin and the systematic nature of the killings. The survival and testimony of the 11-year-old girl instantly dismantled this flimsy fabrication. She became more than a survivor. She was the sole voice of truth in this tragic event. Her suffering was immeasurable, yet her courageous actions provided the decisive turning point for justice, exposing the real perpetrator. Her silent escape and testimony dealt a fatal blow to her 15-year-old brother's plans. When the 15-year-old eldest son was arrested and all evidence pointed directly to him, the case moved beyond the question of criminal facts to a deeper and more complex debate over how he should be punished. The King County Prosecutor's Office in Washington State charged the boy with aggravated first-degree murder and first-degree attempted murder, immediately propelling the case to a legal climax. From the very beginning, the prosecution was firm. They classified this not as typical juvenile misconduct, but as an extremely brutal and premeditated family massacre. Accordingly, they formally petitioned the court to transfer the 15-year-old's case from juvenile court to adult court. This decline hearing would determine the most consequential aspect of the boy's life, the potential severity of his punishment. If convicted in adult court, he could face 25 years to life under Washington state law. If he remained in juvenile court, he could be detained only until the age of 25. The prosecution's argument rested on several key points. First, the cruelty and systematic nature of the crime. The methodical killing of sleeping family members, one by one, demonstrated cold and deliberate planning, not impulsive rage. The victims had no opportunity to defend themselves, and forensic reports confirmed that 4 of the victims had fatal headshots, proof of the extreme brutality of the act. Second, the attempted cover-up and scene manipulation. The boy's false 911 call and his attempt to frame his 13-year-old brother demonstrated a complete lack of responsibility and a deliberate effort to evade justice. The prosecution argued that this was strong evidence of his low amenability to treatment, highlighting that he was not capable of rehabilitation in a juvenile setting. In court, the prosecution emphasized the profound social harm caused by the murder of the Humiston family, arguing that no shield of youth could protect someone who committed such a severe act. Their stance represented a firm commitment to public safety and the enforcement of justice. In response, The defense team adopted a sophisticated strategy, focusing on the underlying causes of the crime. They portrayed the 15-year-old, not as a monster but as a victim of an extremely oppressive family environment. Through official court filings, the defense described in detail the Humiston family's isolated religious life. The children were completely cut off from society, and obedience to parental authority was the only permissible way of life. Even minor academic failures posed a perceived existential threat to the eldest son. The defense argued that his horrific actions were not the product of innate malice, but rather the culmination of years of psychological isolation, extreme control, and escalating despair. The defense heavily cited the Kent factors, emphasizing the boy's emotional maturity and home environment. They argued that holding a developing adolescent to the same standards and punishments as an adult would be cruel, denying him the potential for rehabilitation. They contended that he could achieve better outcomes in the juvenile system, which offers intensive therapy and structured rehabilitation programs. These arguments heightened the tension of the courtroom drama. The prosecution emphasized free will and accountability, while the defense highlighted environmental influence and potential for rehabilitation, creating a fierce clash between two aspects of justice. The sharply divided positions placed an enormous burden on the King County judge. Presiding over the transfer hearing, the judge deliberated for months, carefully weighing evidence, expert testimony, and psychological evaluations. Another critical point during the proceedings was the integrity of the evidence. The prosecution alleged that the defense may have tampered with or manipulated evidence when accessing the crime scene, while the defense countered that these claims were merely attempts to undermine their advocacy. This intense courtroom battle underscored the high sensitivity and social significance of the case. The judge ultimately ruled that there was no clear evidence of misconduct, but the controversy received widespread media coverage, amplifying public tension. Ultimately, the transfer hearing was not simply a legal ruling, it was a philosophical and societal dilemma. How should society respond when its most vulnerable members commit the most horrific crimes? Adult court symbolized retributive justice, while juvenile court embodied restorative justice. The court had to weigh these two forms of justice against each other. This process also symbolically expanded the private suffering the boy endured in his family home into a public ethical dilemma on the courtroom stage. The final decision on whether to transfer him to adult court would be a ruling that would forever determine the trajectory of his life. After the intense courtroom battles and the long, drawn-out transfer hearing, the judicial process was finally moving toward its ultimate conclusion. Once the decision regarding whether to transfer the 15-year-old eldest son to adult court was made or was on the verge of being made, the case entered the solemn and weighty phase of criminal trial proceedings. The outcome of this trial would not only determine the fate of a single boy, but would also serve as an important precedent in how the U.S. justice system ultimately addresses extremely heinous crimes committed by juveniles. The legal resolution of this case starkly illustrates the long-standing debate between retributive justice and restorative justice. If the judge decided to transfer the boy to adult court, it would signal that the crime's social harm exceeded the bounds of his age, and that his potential for rehabilitation was extremely limited. A conviction in adult court would likely result in a near-life sentence, providing a measure of closure to the victims and the community a sense that justice had been served. Society would interpret the boy's lifetime confinement as a safeguard for public safety. Conversely, if the court opted to keep the case in juvenile court, it would indicate recognition that the boy was still developing emotionally and psychologically, and that his actions were the product of an oppressive environment, meriting opportunity for rehabilitation and reintegration. Juvenile court focuses less on punishment and more on preventing recidivism and supporting social reintegration, providing intensive treatment and guidance until the age of 25 to attempt to heal his fractured life. Whatever the outcome, this judicial conclusion could never be perfect. Adult court carries the ethical burden of taking a young life behind bars, while juvenile court risks the perception that justice for the 5 innocent victims is insufficiently served. The final decision of the law represents society's gravest response to violence and despair in youth. The true ending of this tragedy, however, resides not in the courtroom, but in the life of the 11-year-old surviving girl. She survived physical gunshot wounds and was eventually discharged from the hospital, yet the loss of her entire family and the psychological trauma of knowing her perpetrator was her own brother will follow her for life. As the sole witness, she played a decisive role in bringing her brother to justice. Her courage deserves the highest respect, but the cost of that courage was unimaginably steep. She is now alone in the world, bearing the complex and conflicting weight of longing for the 5 family members she lost and the fear and hatred she feels toward her brother. Community and government agencies are providing comprehensive support for her protection and recovery, But no therapy can erase the terror of that dawn from her memory. Her life represents the most bitter conclusion of the Humiston family tragedy, and her healing is, in essence, the ultimate form of restorative justice this case can achieve. Even after the Humiston case is legally closed, the questions it raises for society will endure. It warns of the dangerous consequences that can emerge behind the veneer of a seemingly perfect and devout family. When extreme isolation and control are imposed, by cutting themselves off from external oversight and assistance, the family allowed internal conflict and the psychological suffering of the eldest son to escalate to catastrophic levels. Neighbors and the community had no awareness of the profound issues within the household until the tragedy occurred. This raises pressing questions about the boundary between private life and public concern. Should neighbors' silence and the isolation of children from the outside world simply be dismissed as privacy? How can society detect and intervene in youth mental health issues that arise from extreme homeschooling or religious isolation? This tragedy has become a powerful catalyst for reflection on adolescent psychological pressure and the hidden dynamics of domestic violence, urging systemic improvements. Even after the final sentence is handed down, the quiet landscape of Paul City, where the Humiston family home once stood, will forever bear the shadow of sorrow and warning. While the law may bring this tragedy to a formal close, the lessons society must learn from what occurred within this isolated household remain very much ongoing. That concludes today's story. How did you find it? Please subscribe and like. Tomorrow, we will return with a new case.